Okay, so let me start again with that. So we're going to start with reviewing legal information that happened. Essentially, it's just like a summary of what we talked about at the legal meeting a few weeks ago. And then we're going to discuss the mission statement results. We will discuss, like, I just want to check in with different team members. I don't know if Tuana's here. It doesn't look like it. She noted that she would be able to be here during this time, but it's also like right at the end of, I think, one of her classes. So otherwise, I think everybody has a representative, at least one representative here, except bylaws. But we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then I also want to talk about what to do with our general volunteers, and then kind of have conversations about like what we're doing going forward. And then I also wanted to share with you all an opportunity that was offered to us by Joe Lubo at West Virginia University. And I'll get more specific about that at the end, but I just kind of wanted to gauge the interest of the members that are here to see if it would be something we would be kind of excited to deal with. Or excited to participate in. Deal with is very casual language. So as far as reviewing the legal information, so Annie sent me a set of videos that I haven't had a chance to watch yet that are very, very, like I perused them and they seem like they're going to be really helpful. But I do also just want to focus on getting everybody caught up to speed with what we kind of decided at the last meeting, and then also check with everyone about one specific thing, which I had mentioned before, the board of directors and the idea of having an interim board of directors. So Annie, do you want me to just go ahead and start talking? Because I can.
Yeah, I mean, feel free. I'll just chime in if I feel like you are missing anything or I need to clarify.
Perfect. Okay. So basically what we settled at that last meeting was kind of the order of operations for us as far as what we're going to be doing going forward with the bylaws, as well as with any kind of legal information. And really the bylaws are going to have to happen before anything else, not just because we need to know, what we're doing, but also because North Carolina actually kind of requires the set of bylaws before you really file any paperwork or pay anyone anything or accept money at all. So that's going to be our first step. Then I think I'll just get into the minutia of that order. So the first thing we did was the mission statement. We've already gone off with that. Part of the reason why we started with the mission statement was Chelsea had made a really, or it might have been Annie too, but you both probably made a good point about the mission statement being a great way to gauge people's involvement level and to see where people are coming from. And so we did that. We'll get into it a little bit more towards the end, but we did get some respondents. It wasn't peak interaction, so we're going to have to kind of talk about like how do we get more people interacting with the group, more people showing up for those kinds of things, and actually getting their voices heard. And then we also talked about the next thing is going to be our board of directors, which is something we'll talk about today. There's a bunch of different little minute details that I'm going to really get into, but sorry, my dog wants to be in here. But I think we'll kind of shelf that for a moment. And then the next thing that we needed to talk about would be the bylaws themselves. So that's a huge chunk of stuff, and it kind of makes it seem like we're probably not going to get through things until like at the end of December, which is what we had hoped to be able to do. I think we're probably looking more at a timeline that's going to be like sometime in maybe April, where we'll have most of those bylaws finished. After that, it's the tax exemption status. We talked a bit about, whether or not accepting prints as membership fees is doable and how we could do that. And there are ways we can do it. We would just have to ask for prints that are at or below a specific value range and have people proclaim the value so that we can claim it on our taxes and report it, basically, not claim it. We will also need to get an employer ID number for anything really at all in order to accept money, give money out, et cetera, et cetera. We'll also need a physical location, but that can be a board member's home. And then I think those are our big priorities right now. I think once we get to this like point where we have bylaws, we have specifics, we know how the organization wants to run. I think that's going to be around the time that we start focusing on like website and accepting membership fees and things like that. Did I miss anything with that, Annie?
No, and I just sent, I think it should have gone to everybody. I sent a file. So what I did was I found a nonprofit assistance website for North Carolina, and I dug through they basically have an assistance manual for how to get started. And so I kind of condensed that information into the highlights for us in terms of like incorporating bylaws, EAN, like how to get that and file it. And then the last section talks about like the liability and how we need to like stress that when we write our bylaws, that we need to say that we are protecting the board of directors and other members from liability, like that language needs to be included. So I just went ahead and sent that because I don't necessarily think that we'll probably get to bylaws, like actually writing them today. One thing that it did mention, it only said one page. One thing it did mention was to use a model for bylaws. So I thought that might be an interesting thing to put out. I know I'm not on the bylaw team, but to throw out to the bylaw team is like, if we want to pick an organization and look at their bylaws and something like that. So, but yeah, that's essentially where we left off, because I think it was a great idea to start with the mission statement, because I was looking at the MAPC's bylaws, and that's kind of like a big part of how it starts. So kind of including that. And then, yeah, how we kind of have laying out the board of directors, and then kind of figuring out what the focus is going to be and how we're going to like run meetings and things like that. So
yeah,
all right, I'm going to try and send this again.
You're right. We're not going to get to the actual like deconstruction of the bylaws yet. Mostly because we need to focus on the board of directors and have like a real conversation about what we're doing with that. Mm-hmm. But also because I think we'll talk a little bit more about this later. We might actually end up combining one of our team sets so that they're working together a little more efficiently, because it's, as we've been kind of working, it's becoming more evident that we need more hands on deck than previously expected. And also a little bit more integration with the way that we're having conversations. So that was precious. And it was perfectly timed. I loved it. So essentially the next thing we need to talk about is the interim board members. So one of the things that we discussed was, and I'm going to really get into like the minute details. It's not a lot of information, but I want to make sure everybody understands where we're going with this. So one thing about our organization is that we can file to change the bylaws whenever we want in North Carolina. And so because of that, what the legal team, Olivia and I, were hoping to do was to have just interim directors for now, so that we have names on the paperwork and we can, keep going, and then have elected board of directors. We don't know exactly what they're doing yet. We don't really have that kind of fleshed out. So any kind of ideas or suggestions you all might have would be good. But I think the main thing for everybody to know is what you can do is you can set a minimum number of board of directors and a maximum number of board of directors. And you can have all of that information in your bylaws without having to file to change them. If it starts to become an issue where there's only two board of director or board members, I guess is what I should say, and there's only two of them, then that's kind of an uncomfortable place to be, because just two people can't make enough decisions, you know, especially depending on what the membership decides the board members' positions will actually do and how much power they'll have. Because it could be that the board of directors technically is the same as regional representatives. You know what I mean? We could phrase it in that way. But it's good to know that you can have a minimum and a maximum. You can also make that stipulation about interim directors. And then the next thing I wanted to say was we need to, we could write down a bylaw amendment to review the bylaws and update them a minimum number of times. That way it's required that we reassess the number of board members every single, like, let's say 6 months or every year or something like that. I talked to Olivia to see if she would like to be an interim board member, and she was all right with it. I'm also fine with being an interim board member. It's essentially what we're already doing. But I wanted to make sure that that was okay with everybody, because I don't want to just decide with, you know, the 3 or 4 people that met that day, like de facto, you guys are in charge, whatever that means right now. And I also wanted to know if anybody else wanted to be an interim board member, because 2 people is not, you know, 2 heads are better than 1, that's true, but 2 heads are not a collective, you know? So what do you all think about that? I'm going to pause here and mute my phone.
I thought that sounded great, and I would love to be a part of that interim board of directors if you would like.
I would also be interested.
I am, no, I think it's a great idea that you guys are interim board. I mean, to me, it makes sense because essentially, like, this is, and it's kind of something I was thinking about. Oh, I just had like my first official board meeting with MAPC, and this idea of like continuity, institutional memory, and kind of like from the beginning, you know, we can, or you guys can definitely kind of lay out how this started, right? And I think that's kind of important to preserve. And especially since this is kind of coming from a place, I know it's responding to a bunch of people's needs and desires and stuff, but I think having like 2 people that started it, kind of shepherding it, I think that's, to me, that's great. I am probably not, I don't know. I don't think I have the wherewithal at this point to be on another board. So I will definitely continue to be at these meetings and do whatever you guys need. Like, just let me know what you need. So.
Okay, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I would be interested as well. Would it be possible to kind of talk about what all that entails exactly? I'm like brand new to this, and I just want to know sort of like what it would entail.
Yes.
I second that as well.
Yes.
And also I do want to kind of bring up one, just I guess like thought as well. Like I would want to make sure that more people, because there's a, you know, because there's a limited number here right now, more people also have the opportunity to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering about as well. Would you, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky, and maybe this is something we circle back to at the end, but who would we ask is the basic question. And the reason I'm asking that is, do we ask other volunteers who have like actively been participating to do a vote? Do we ask the whole membership? And if we ask the whole membership, how do we get the word out to maximize that vote? Because I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't know why I'm being vague, but like for our mission statement, we only had 28 responses and we have 23 volunteers. So just, you know, bear that in mind, you know, think about it a little bit. You don't have to answer me right now, but I'm going to look at the forms that we had, if my files would open, and kind of talk about the way that I understand the board of directors. It's, so the cool thing about North Carolina is it's pretty like open,
Yeah.
theory. But at the same time, because it's so open, we kind of don't really have anything in specific that we can say. They have suggestions. And again, one of those suggestions is like to look at another group and see like, sorry about that noise, but to look at another group and see how they've decided to structure. But in some ways we've looked at those groups, and that's why we're creating our own. So let me find board of directors in here.
Yeah, it's my understanding that North Carolina, it has literally no requirement for your bylaws, which bylaws are where it's going to list what the board is made of or how it's constituted. So I guess, yeah, I think it might be. So yeah, to answer the question of like, what would that entail? I mean, that's tricky because that's kind of where, you know, you have to decide like what are important things, what are important positions. And I guess it could be something that can't really happen right away, in terms of, you know, just making sure the structure that people are envisioning, right? I mean, because all I know is traditional, like, you know, the one I'm on, right, is president, vice president, and, you know, treasurer, secretary, so on and so on. And so is that a model that we like everybody likes, or is it that we don't need all of that, or, or, you know, is it that we keep that model, but then where we get unique to us is just detailing what that position is? Because I'm not opposed to essentially just kind of copying whatever organization that we all kind of like, but then making sure that the positions are very much kind of more unique or more representative of the community. So it could be we keep the president title, but
well, I think a lot of that is going to be, I don't know if we should do public nominations yet, since it's only a temporary, to answer you, Stephanie. Since it's only a temporary position, like it's going to last at most 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to end pretty much in April, maybe May, and then they can re-elect. But I do think what Annie is saying has a little bit to do with kind of the difference between what we're required to do as the board versus what we want the board to do as a membership group, right? And so I just sent a document out. It's how to start a 501c3 nonprofit in North Carolina. It's from some organization, I don't remember anymore, but they really lay out a lot of the requirements of the board of directors in a way that I found really helpful. And so I think maybe what we'll do is we'll keep to that specific idea of what is required. Let's do that. Everything else we'll keep to the volunteers, because volunteers might want to become board members later. We might end up, you know, writing out what we're going to have the board of directors do, putting it up for a vote, and then getting a lot of feedback back where they're like, well, math, 5 people, you know, on the board doesn't sit right with me. I'd rather have 3, or I'd rather have 8, or I'd rather have 10. Or they might say something like, I want them to say vice president, or they might say, I really don't like the vice president. And I think that term, and I think that is definitely where we're going to have like a lot of nitty gritty conversations. I don't know if that's a offensive terminology. I'm gonna look it up later. But that's kind of where we're at. So what I wanted to show you all is, so I just control F for board of directors, well, for board, because I'm lazy. And so a couple of things are, there are roles and responsibilities. So there's a quick summary of it at, I think I'm on page 3 after the initial planning. So some of the requirements or roles and responsibilities are selecting and reviewing the performance of the chief executive, whatever that means for us. So that could be, you know, deciding how we choose. I don't know. It could be really whatever structure we want it to be. Recruiting new board members, that's another thing that's really important to keep in mind. Ensuring effective organizational planning, which we're all pretty much already doing. But you'll be a little bit more involved. And what we'll probably do, and I haven't talked to Olivia about this yet, but if you all are going to be at the same like level as us, which we would really like, because it's still a little too much for the two of us, especially as she's getting towards the end of her semester and I'm getting more things that I'm having to like step in for. You will probably be coming to our like bi-weekly meetings. So that's one thing that I would want you all to know. They're not always bi-weekly, but they tend to be, and they're usually on Thursdays. So we tend to talk for a while, either on the phone or through Zoom. I have no idea how to do like a multiple way phone call anymore ever since the computer happened. But we would do something like that so that we're all on the same page. We're all checking in on volunteers, et cetera, et cetera. And then of course, evaluating organizational performance, which is something we're going to be doing at this meeting, providing financial oversight, ensuring legal and ethical integrity. So those are some very vague guidelines. But the first kind of priority for the board is to clarify the organization's mission and purpose. We've already done the mission in literal terms, but we'll also need to start talking about short-term and long-term goals. We already have identified who the organization will serve, clarifying a lot of the values, but we'll need to start like really writing those out. Planning for how the organization's mission might evolve, which is exactly what we're doing with the bylaws. The board of directors will also be the people who will adopt the bylaws. So that's a really big thing. That's also why I was really uncomfortable with just 2 people. I mean, it's not like we're going to be like, no, but still it feels better to have, you know, especially our first set of bylaws, to have more people saying yes, you know, or no, or maybe, whatever, you know, the case may be. And then I want you all to scroll down to, if you have opened it, you don't have to have had it opened right now, but there is on page 6, there's something called part 3. That's the duties and liabilities of nonprofit board members. This is a really long thing that I want you all to, you know, read through. And maybe what we'll do is, if you're still interested, on Monday, is that enough time to read through that section for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, I know it's grading season, so thought I should check.
Which I'm behind on, so.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up.
Triggered.
But I think if you guys can all read through this by like Monday or Tuesday, and then just get back to me through the RI Print Guild so that it's a public kind of declaration of your intent, public, semi-public at least, that would be really great. It talks a lot about legal liabilities for the board members, fiduciary duties. It also talks a little bit about conflicts of interest and what that really means for everybody. And there's a couple other things that they talk about here, but it was a really good read. Olivia and I have both read it and are willing to do it, but I do think it's a good idea. I'm glad that you guys said something instead of us just going with it. Yeah, I can send it through email, Kay. Let me make a note for myself because I will forget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if I'm just being maybe like overly suspicious. And so, I guess I would just want to voice this, but I feel like there like could be a low amount of activity, just because I think so much of it's like still existing like within the unknown. And like, I think once we get more things figured out, I feel like people will be like more confident to like step up and do things.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ruben. That's part of why I think it's really important for us to set a date to reassess bylaws, because I think the biggest issue for a lot of organizations that some of us might have felt burned by, I mean, we've all probably felt burned by at least one, is that they don't have any kind of adaptability built in. And that can get really frustrating because the world is designed, like the world just changes. So why wouldn't you be designed to keep up, you know?
Yeah.
But that's kind of what happens when access to power gets a little bit more democratized, in theory. People get a lot more tight-fisted. So yeah, that's a couple of pages worth of information, but just get back to me. I'm going to make a note for the people who are interested. So it was Stephanie. Okay. And Ruben?
Yep.
Okay.
And just to clarify again, it's basically all of part 3.
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much. You
Great.
might find it beneficial to read through the rest of it as well.
Yeah.
Since that'll essentially be what we'll be doing next. And also, Annie, there are some, which I'm sure you already remembered this, but I haven't read through them in detail. So there are some example bylaws at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I think they start on page 14. I don't know how adaptable they're going to be to like an art institution, because most things are not like amenable to the, you know, artistic language, but it at least gives us like an easier, kind of more clear-cut way to section out the bylaws as we're writing them.
And I think that, I mean, again, like when we clarify, like we clarified the mission, I think when we clarify, like, how do we achieve the mission, right? I think when that gets clarified a little more, that essentially kind of lays out the bylaw. Because, like, you know, all we really need to say in the bylaws are, you know, how we will operate, you know, so how meetings will go, are we having conferences, workshops, you know, or maybe we leave it open to the possibility, you know, what do we envision the future? And then
we'll also have to like talk about Zoom or like whatever platforms we're going to interface with, how we're going to use those. We're going to need to lay out bylaws for Instagram, for the mailing list, all of that kind of stuff. So,
and it could be too, maybe think about it the way we have these committees kind of set up, like there's a social media section, and that's like could be mailing lists, you know, but also
and I think the benefit of that is not just for our volunteers immediately, but also once we get to the point of having whatever form of, you know, leadership we have, we can say, well, here's these 2-3 pages of information on how your job works before you apply for it, because like that's been a really big problem for like SGCI. Nobody knows what the heck their job is. And they're like, I guess I'll be a member at large. What do I do? You know, and there's some vagueness that happens with that when you're applying for those positions that I think we should really try to, you know, get rid of, so that we have people who are motivated in every position possible. But also not just motivation. It's not just an issue of motivation. It's an issue of, you know, clear communication.
I was going to say communication, and just kind of like, that's the thing is like, I mean, I read through MAPC's bylaws and they're, I mean, they're okay. Like, but I'm just like, again, it's like that, there's that vagueness. And I know it's kind of where we definitely will have to walk a line where we don't want it to be too detailed, because you definitely want to leave it open enough that it can change. You know, it needs to change. So it needs to be a little bit more general, but at the same time, I think just what you were saying, like having some guidelines, like here are ways to accomplish that kind of feel, as opposed to like absolutely having to do this, but more like this is how it could be accomplished kind of feel. I think that's how we want to think about it. So
Yeah. And I think maybe a good way to think about that is to say, like, is this something I would have to explain to someone who I just hired? You can think about it that way, you know, like, is this something where people might have questions? And what I do, which I know annoys the crap out of him, but I will ask my husband. I'm like, hey, John, does this make sense? Because he's completely outside of the art realm. He's completely outside of, and I want it to be something that as soon as somebody reads it, they go, I know what that means. You know, we will have to have some legal jargon because it is a legal document. But at the same time, I want it to be approachable enough that people are like, I'm clear on what I'm expected to do. I'm clear on how I can change my position if I'd like to. I'm clear on how I can leave my position if I need to. You know, I want all of that clarity present. So with that, did you have anything else to add, Annie? I think I'm finished with legal, but.
No, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, that's pretty much where we left off. And I feel like, I mean, I think we're moving at a pretty good clip and in a good direction. So I'm feeling pretty positive. So
Yes.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm also pretty pumped. So speaking of the mission statement, let me share my screen with you if I remember how Zoom works.
It's just been too much Zoom.
Yeah, no, the other day, Zoom for the first time crapped out on me. And I was like, this is literally the last day of class.
That happened to me yesterday. Was it yesterday for you too?
Yeah, it was.
It's weird. I went to open class and it was like, we can't find you. And I'm like, what? They're like, contact your admin. Apparently my link was corrupted or something. And like, I couldn't start class.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
So like I said before, we got 28 responses. I manually turned this off because I don't know if it's my Mac or what, but like my interface wasn't working with the automatic timer that was recommended to us. But I also think this might be a good way to do it, just to manually shut it off. So we got 28 responses. We had 14%, we collected this information anonymously, so we're not going to see anybody's names unless they wrote them out for us. But the majority said yes by an overwhelming percentage, 24. 4 people said somewhat. We asked how people could improve that mission statement. There was, I think it's clear, great content. This is one of our biggest critiques with that last sentence, is breaking it into something shorter, which we had talked a little bit about. So I think we got I think like 4 or 5 comments about that. But, and then as far as without paying for our impetus for change, we should probably clarify what we mean. I think that was a little bit more just like a generalized statement. And I think perhaps we don't necessarily need that generalized statement in there anymore. Again, that final sentence. And then they gave us an example as well. More than 2 sentences in this statement. Again with the, and then this comment said, finding a way to put safe space in there, maybe not that exact phrasing, but the idea of, maybe not sanctuary either, but some kind of terminology of, that security. So that's something we might also want to put into the mission statement. And then, again, the pain.
I'm going to suggest, I feel like that's a how-to kind of, like how we will, support the mission statement is by creating that space. So it could be something for the bylaws, maybe.
Okay. Could that also be something that maybe goes in our values on the website as well?
I think
one other thing we talked about briefly in legal, and it's definitely not like ironed out or set in stone or anything, but we were like, a lot of this information can go in various places on the website that we eventually produce. like the mission statement, and then underneath the mission statement could be like supplementary statements that discuss our values, and then a follow-up of like an FAQ or something like that. So we have multiple opportunities to kind of reiterate that information. And, you know, a lot of us have taught before. So we know that the more you can repeat something, the more place, and we've taught virtually too. So the more places you put that same information, the more likely people are to see it. So that's one thing we might talk a little bit about, is that safe space. And I think that's about it. Those 3 statements. Then we did ask a question about being able to translate this. We had 3 people that were like, 5 people that were like, I think so.
I wanted to jump in on this one. I just couldn't, I know for me, I put like somewhat because like but I also don't know like another language. So I just don't know how like some of that stuff would be translated.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if things would get lost in translation, but other than that, I would have said yes.
Yeah, I think what it is the sentence structure. So I also think like one person mentioned that at the end, the sentences are kind of long. Shorter, more declarative sentences would be more clear.
I think that's mine.
Okay, yeah. They would be a little bit easier, I think, to translate, because there's like one language that I know very basically, other than Spanish, which I also like, I could talk to you about food and that's about it. But German is the only sentence structure that's anywhere close to what we wrote in that second sentence. Most other Romantic languages, it would be like, wow, this is the longest sentence in the world. But for some reason, German's just like, let's just put all of it in there, like all just. But I do think, yeah, breaking it down would be fine too. So, and then this is the big, like everything else is also very important, but this is a big overarching kind of feedback. So we asked how the membership is interacting with us, how they access this link. I think we're going to probably continue asking this for different votes so that we get that kind of feedback. But the vast majority of people, 19 people, saw that through the mailing list. 8 people saw it through Instagram, which the only reason this concerns me is because of the, data. Like if we did a statistical analysis, which I did not do, we have a significantly smaller response rate from Instagram than we should. Like it's very disproportionate to what's going on with our mailing list. And some of that, like Olivia had mentioned, some of that might be people who had joined out of, that kind of vague interest of like, I'm not sure, we'll see where it goes. Ruben, you also mentioned this, like that we don't have anything really concrete to offer them yet. So they're kind of like, I'll keep an eye on you. I'm not sure if I want to be part of the voting, but I'm, watching to see what happens. And then we had one person who said other, who might have just been in the actual meeting. Something like that. Or it could have been like Olivia, because I had texted her, that kind of stuff. But I do think we are going to need to try and work to engage people a little bit more on Instagram. I also have noticed that because of the liking rates for our Meet Our Members posts have been kind of fluctuating. So I posted, I think it was Olivia, then me, and then we started posting other members, and it was like a significant decline in interactions with that post. And so I think part of it is we fell off a little bit in between. So we really need to kind of keep building that kind of presence up on Instagram. It's especially because of the algorithm, like they're just not going to see it if the algorithm doesn't show it. And we can put it in our stories as much as we want, but like there's like 1 million people and organizations who are doing that. Like I can't get through all the stories that I've got up there, So trying to find different ways to interact on Instagram is going to be important, which we'll come back to later. Well, in a couple of seconds, actually.
maybe a little random, but do you know if the social media team is using Buffer?
Using what?
So I mean, and it could be something I just email. I'd recommend an app called Buffer. It allows you to upload all of the content that you want for, like, say, a week in advance or even 2 weeks. And then it just time sends out stuff. So you do it once and then you forget about it, and it can send out all your content on a time schedule.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest right now. The Instagram team is me and Tuan, who's mostly doing design related stuff. So it's mostly me posting.
I mean, it's definitely not super important yet, but I would definitely recommend it.
Well, I already think it would probably be helpful because, again, we're all in very different time zones. Like,
Yeah.
It's wild for me to try to anticipate, like, okay, I'm not really sure what our demographics are, so I don't know if I should be posting at 3 a.m. because most of the people are on the Pacific, coast, or should I be, because 3 a.m. for me is 6 a.m, so the most people are going to see it, throughout the day. Or should I be doing it in the afternoon for international people? Like, when, why? And also I have to also live my life. So it's a little bit difficult. And I think having something like that would be good. Is that app free?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the Instagram like a business page? Like, do you have access to all the different analytics that you can do?
Oh, it should be.
Yeah, I was gonna
Is
say
that
it should
free
be.
too?
Yeah, that's free.
Okay.
Yeah,
I saw
mine
the
is.
option and I was like, maybe. But
Yeah,
then
yeah. I have it on mine, and it's really helpful because it can tell you it can give you more analytics about your posts and all that stuff, and it's been really helpful. Like, you can time your posts a little bit better, and then you can also get access to things like who is saving your post as well. That has been immensely helpful.
Yeah, that would definitely help a lot with figuring out what time of day. It seems like I have a loose feeling that Friday at 10ish has been working better, but I'm also yeah, but what if Saturday is better? Because on my own page, Saturday is great, it's popping. I don't really care because I suck at social media, but as a human entity, but that's not something I want to use to drag down Instagram either.
Yeah.
So
and it'll tell you too where your who's accessing your posts, if it's coming from your direct network, or if it's if you're getting new interactions, or if people are just flat out seeing your posts, which is also really helpful. It's just, I don't know, if you nerd out about data, it's really great.
I have a sociology degree.
There you go. You will love it.
I'm really excited to hear that. So I think we'll probably switch over to that too. Another issue was, and this is just also an update that I probably should have said at the beginning, but Olivia and I did an interview with Miranda for Pine Copper Line. And when we were doing that, she mentioned to us that when you search for our Radical Intersectional Printmakers Guild, our Instagram doesn't pop up. And it's because I can't name the business because our name is too long. So we got to kind of figure that out, or maybe we start doing the website more. I'm not sure, but that's something I want you guys to kind of kick around in your head. We don't need that immediate answer either, because I think it's also a good idea to really gain our following and focus on a couple of different, pots instead of adding more onto the fire. But yeah, just something to think about. Were there any other things that we wanted to talk about with the mission statement? Okay.
What now? What do we want to do with this information?
That was my question for you. So I think what we're going to do, I know for sure, we can go ahead and break that last sentence down a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we will probably, what I've started thinking, and we can come back to this idea too, but I kind of think that legal and bylaw are sort of the same group. And so I think what we might just do is combine the two into legal and bylaw as a group, or just legal group or whatever, and kind of adapt this to that. And then I don't know if you guys want us to send it out again for another vote, because most of the feedback is grammatical.
Maybe with a second edit.
Mhm.
Like, could this exist as like a, or is it already existing as a Google Doc where
Mhm.
we could do like suggestions and comments through that, rewrite it, and then send it out in the exact same manner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already in the drive, I
Oh,
think.
okay. I forget we have that.
I don't know where it is though.
Is it
It's
under?
probably in legal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's where it
Mission statement
belongs.
draft. Oh my
Wow.
God. Okay.
It's almost like we like made a plan and stuck to it or something.
Let me go. Let me
Very
access it.
unusual for me. So here are some other things. These were the questions we asked on that first survey, essentially. And then the note on how we would share it. We asked for feedback until November 6th. These are other things. This is where we talked about the website. Basically our Miss America dreams of our vision statement, a Q&A section, definition of our terms, our name, etc., our action statement, our values, all of those things. You know, we might not do all of them, but they are ways that we can also address some of those concerns that were kind of put out before.
So I don't have, is this like a publicly available drive or?
You think you have to share it?
Yeah, I've probably shared it with you at some stage, but who knows when. So let me just go ahead.
I also think like, yeah.
Here.
I also know that like if you don't, I may have like not done something and then it got lost.
Oh wait, I just sent you only that file. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, you know what it is? We all have the same password for it.
That's right.
It's the same password as the Gmail.
Oh,
What the
right.
heck?
Okay.
Have a little moment there.
I think that having people kind of edit the doc is fine. I don't know if every time we make a grammatical change, it needs to go out as a survey. I feel like as long as the content, like the message is still the same. And it could be something where, you know, we kind of get it to a point where it looks good. And then that's something that gets voted, you know, like then once that, and then the bylaws and all of that in like a couple months, that then gets voted on.
Well, and what we could do is we could clarify like, okay, ratifying. This is a ratifying vote.
Yeah.
Once like we can fix up the grammatical issues, post it publicly, send an email out, etc. I do think we should probably re-examine this phrase or potentially just take it out.
I'm curious, the people that said somewhat, was there an opportunity for them to clarify what that meant?
I had hoped that this would be, but when I'm looking at it now, those two questions aren't directly linked. So I think maybe next time we will have a more direct link between them.
Yeah, because yeah, next time on the survey, you could just have it if they said somewhat, then it could pop up a text box underneath it, and then they could just type in why they said that. Once they pick it, because that's where I would want to know. Like, I want to know. I'm like, well, why was somewhat? What could have been better? What have you?
So, I was one of the somewhats, and I only said somewhat because I had feedback. And actually, the that longer one, if you scroll back up, the one where I directly am talking about the without pain as our impetus, that's me. And so if it's 14.3% of 28, isn't that about like 4 people? So if there's like 4 bits of feedback, maybe that. Oh yeah, it's 4 respondents who said that. So I think it's mainly just like for the sake of saying, for me, it was for the sake of literally saying like, I don't want to see that be like the final document, you know, like I would want to see it changed in some way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as that change in some way, I think
would
maybe
need-
what we
yeah.
do, because basically we're having a kind of conversation about like qualitative versus quantitative data and like which one is more beneficial, which one do we listen to more directly. And I don't want to pick quantitative over qualitative because that's a very common mistake that a lot of people make. But what I do think we should do is say, okay, yes, 4 people said somewhat. We have 10 responses of feedback. There are more than 4 that are a little bit critical. So what if what we do next time is we address all of the comments in here and then we send it out for ratification. And when I say that, I don't say like, this is the final vote forever, period, end of story. It's more of, here is our draft edited to a final draft, right? Which is, you know, kind of an oxymoron, but it's a final draft. We have a vote and that is where we decide the quantitative, right? So that's just a, I also am hoping that we'll have more people like interacting with the page progressively. Especially if we use the phrase ratify or even put the word final in there so that they're like, oh, like this is like a real thing that we should like be part of, not just a vote, you know, and then give them the opportunity. Basically, it's going to be like 2 questions. Would you like to accept this as the mission statement? Yes or no? And then 1 more question where it says, if no, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if we have enough feedback from that, where it's like multiple people have different issues with it, then we can go back to drawing board. It's not the end of the world. But if we, let's say we still have the same 28 people who reply, we have 4 people who, you know, begrudgingly say, yes, we're going to kind of lose that information. I'm actually kind of contradicting myself. So perhaps we do a question that is yes, somewhat, or no, for ratifying. I don't know, what do you guys think? Because the 2 different kind of directions are, one is more clear cut, it's simpler, but it's also more likely to alienate people. Especially if we only have the if no, then why prompt show up if you select no. So maybe instead of saying if no, then why, we say, you know, do you have any feedback? I don't know. What are your opinions on that?
I think we should be direct, and if they do say no, and they're willing to say why, then we should just directly ask them for that feedback.
Okay.
That's
make
what
it-
I stand.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Oh, I was finished. No worries. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess my thing would be just like, do we make it required or not? Which is like my like, it's like, because then yeah, it's like if somebody's like no, and then like you put them on the spot and be like, then why? And then they're like, well, I don't know. They're like, I don't want to say it, just doesn't feel right, or like they don't have, like they feel intimidated suddenly, or like they feel like they're being like called out or something. Like, do we make it like required and be like, if you're gonna say no, you need to like answer, you need to like say something, or if it's like no.
I don't
Yeah,
think
I
so.
agree. Yeah.
We can also change the language as well. So we
Yeah.
don't have to say if no, then why.
Yeah.
It could be more like, if no, are there ways we could improve this message?
Yeah.
You know, that language changes. And then of course it's not a required answer. And then I interrupted you, Kay. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to agree. I don't think it should be a required question.
Okay. So I'm going to make a note of that as well. So just so we're all on the same page, we are essentially going to revise the mission statement and send it out for ratification.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Getting thumbs
And then it'll be 2 questions that are essentially a yes or no, right?
Mhm.
And then and elaborate. You remember when you used to have to do that on tests?
Explain.
Elaborate. Show your work.
I have to remember to do that for my own students and be like, oh yeah, that worked for me. Yeah, and I think I just also want to be transparent. I mean, like, I don't know, like, mission statements are not within my like wheelhouse, and they're like a document that I like, I've never written one, I've never edited one. So I also like don't know if I'm like totally open to the fact that like my like perspective on mission statements is like wrong and it's like growing. So I just want
I've never done any of this
to.
ever in my whole life.
Actually, I think your comment was really helpful because for me, writing mission statements, it has to be clear. Like if that's confusing, then this isn't good, you know, like there needs to be clarity. I mean, I've only written a couple and like my goal with them is always, how can I say it concisely? So it's not like you're not reading a novel, and how can it just say what I want, but like punch, like clear, like,
Yeah.
And again, it's just overall. So
Yeah. And if that's helpful, that's all that I'm coming to the writing with. Any sort of writing that I read and edit is always coming from the perspective of like, is it just clear? Do I understand it as a reader? So, okay, that's helpful. Okay.
Oh.
I was like worried. I was like, oh.
No, I think it's perfect because that's another thing too, whereas like I don't want to be the last voice, because if I'm also the one like coming up with it, like I know, and when I read it, I go, well, this makes sense to me, but I like versed it. So of course I know what it means.
Yeah, same.
That's a big part of why we brought up the mission statement again, because there is that, like, there were only, I think, 3 or 4 of us at that last meeting. So
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's the same with the kind of interim board of directors. Like, yes, it could just be me and Olivia, but like, are we really getting the full, you know, spectrum of possible perspectives as much as possible, you know? I think it's a good idea to, I know I said possible twice in one sentence and it's gonna bother me forever, but it's
recorded.
I know. But I think it's a really important thing to have multiple eyes on something before it's basically in charge of anybody, you know, or permanent. So does anybody have anything else to say about the mission statement results? We're all good.
I do want to say, like, when at first you said the responses were lower, I'm actually like, I thought it was going to be much lower than 28. And so I think I don't know, maybe I didn't think it was that bad that it was 28.
Yeah, it's wild because if we look at just like our mailing list is around 90 people. So this is like a pretty good response rate. It's like 1/3 of our general population. But then if we look at Instagram,
Right,
it's like, you know, less than a 16th, which is not an ideal sample size.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I do agree. That's the one. I'm really surprised, but I think I've learned a little bit about Instagram now that we've been talking in this meeting. So
yes,
I
I
agree.
learned a lot. So, so that being said, then I would like to show you all, I'm going to kind of pivot to talking about the teams. And so since Tuan isn't here, I'm going to start talking about what she and I have been doing. And also, if I get anyone's pronouns correctly or incorrect and you know that I have, please let me know. Please just correct me. You can correct me in the chat or in real life. But Tuan has been helping me with the Instagram files. So one thing that she has done is I asked her to create, that's not it. I asked her to create a couple of templates for like a visual kind of effect, kind of going with the repeated pattern, but kind of color coding our information. I don't know if that's just like from my like Capricorn rising that I'm like color coding is good. But I do think maybe that's, you know, something that'll really help. These are things that essentially she's uploaded to PSDs as well. So anybody can upload whatever imagery they need to for each one, which has really been a great help. And then she's also been doing the designs for Meet Our Members. So this is the template. And then of course, if you've seen, let's go to Annie's. So we still have your original headshots, and then we also have meet our members. And so this makes it a little bit easier for me to upload things to Instagram. One thing that I don't understand how to not do is I have to pick this image first on Instagram. Otherwise it will crop everything
Yeah.
in a very weird way. And it makes me really mad because then it crops people's images of their work.
Yeah.
If you know how not to do that, tell me, because that kills me too.
Oh, guys, I use Layout, like the app on your phone, and you can basically you take a screenshot of like white or black or like whatever you want the background to be, and then you're just basically like adding a border or whatever. I know it's not like always the cleanest, but it doesn't cut the artwork off, which is nice.
That is nice because it's very upsetting for
There
me.
is also, if we are wanting to make like to streamline stuff on Instagram and we're seeking images, you could just ask that the images that be sent in be formatted for Instagram to like their pixel amounts. You can actually,
The pixel ratio, that's true.
yeah, they've got the pixel ratios. Like if you just Google it, you'll find it. But yeah, like it'll give you the pixel ratios for normal, like whatever 4:3 it is, I think 4:3 ratio, and then square.
That might be really nice because I didn't even think about that, but I should have done, I should have done that, but I didn't.
It's a recent thing that I just did, and I think like it was some other Instagram thing that I did where they like asked for it, and I was like, oh
This is
wow,
super helpful. Yeah.
yeah. It's like turned my life upside down now.
I've done exactly that where I've had like posting a bunch of images at once. And actually I'm looking at the one on mine where it's the one called Love. It always wants to crop it where it's just like the center of it and you can't see anything. And I'm always just like, ah.
Yeah, and it's essentially what we had to do because it was like, how else are we going to post this? Like, do we just not post it?
Yeah. Does it look confusing? And
Yeah.
they're like, that's not my image.
And I didn't feel comfortable like going in and reformatting your image for you, because then it's like, so I think, those are two good ideas. I think it's a good idea to do.
It could be too that since you asked us to make the drives that have our names in it and put stuff in it, it could be that like out here, kind of out in the general folder, it has just directions, like how to, like guidelines. And so when you're submitting, then you have the guidelines to look at, and then you can do that when you create your folder. So it has like a place to live.
Yes. Well, this guy is in there already, but I think I'm going to add to that what we just said.
Yeah, add the
optimal sizes are 1080 pixels wide by 566 pixels to
what was the second number? I'm sorry, Ruben.
1080 pixels by 566.
566. Thank you.
And then it's also to 1350 high. Here, let me just copy paste the text and put it in the chat. Actually, it might make it easier. And then 1080 is like, yeah, the maximum pixel amount. Let me put it in the chat now. Let's just copy paste it from a Google thing.
Unsquare. What a fun word.
Yeah. Actually, let me put this here. That's the link that I'm actually pulling that from, because sometimes Google pulls a thing like a snippet from like the web page, but then you actually go to click the web page and then it's like something different. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Cool. And then I'm also going to put this here. I don't know if I need to put the unsquare shapes, do I? Does that matter?
I don't think so. I mean, I think if it's like 1080 but on the widest side.
Okay.
Yeah. like that would be understandable enough.
Okay, cool. I don't know why this freaking program hates me so much, but it sure does. Here we go. Okay. Cool. Cool.
And I'm just like pivoting really quickly. Do we need like a communication sent out to get more meet our member
Yes.
posts? Okay.
Yes, I think we have one more person. Yeah, we have Thon themselves because I posted K's today.
Yeah, I saw that one.
And so if they could start sending more in, that would be great because we are running low. And again, it's open to any volunteers. So
Okay.
Stephanie, you could also put a little folder in here. Stephanie, did you have any of the passwords?
No.
Okay, let me text them to you. They're all the same password, but I'll text it to you, okay?
Awesome. That would be perfect.
Okay.
But yeah, I can send information.
Thank you.
Of course.
So let me see. I'm sorry if you hear like a bunch of tiny feet running around my house really loudly. My husband's family is here and there's a bunch of little kids and they're just like having a riot downstairs. So
You're good. Hear nothing.
Yeah, I always wonder what people can hear because like sometimes I'm in the middle of teaching class and my husband's like, I'm gonna do laundry. And I'm like, why? Like, why are you running the washing machine right now? But I don't.
My partner does the same thing.
Yeah.
But nothing, I never hear anything. I like monitor the like audio output like a hawk when I'm teaching. I'm like, what can you hear? Can you hear that my partner's watching RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah. No, I think the worst is like I set it to really high so that most noises wouldn't filter through. But the worst is that like my dog is super loud, which I know Annie, you understand. But he also is like, he has no boundaries. And so I have a couch right here where he'll like perch and just like hit me while I'm teaching because I'm not paying attention to him. And I just have to be like, yep, it's fine. We're fine. Everything's fine.
Mine's a weirdo. Like he's fine now, and then he'll just decide you're somewhere and not paying attention to him. So he will try and find you.
Yes.
Vocally.
Yeah.
One time, I usually stick him outside, and I actually got so distracted when I was teaching, I had to stop because he was trying to open the door with his mouth, and he was just drooling all over the door. And I was like in the middle of talking about like Gothic architecture, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I gotta stop, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot. I'm so distracted right now.
Yes. So those are the two kind of really big things that we've done for Instagram so far. I think that's really all the updates that I have. We talked about meet our members. We also talked about needing more frequent posts. One thing I really want to say is we need more help with the Instagram. I've already kind of said it, but I'd like to get some like solid confirmations. I know Kay, you've said that you would be willing to help as well.
I would also be willing to help. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say that before.
Okay. And what did you say, Kay? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to put you both down, Kay and Stephanie.
What kind of posts do we want to see more of? So
I actually have a question for you all. Do you all have your phone?
Yeah.
Unless you're like watching this on your phone. So I actually posted some, I don't think controversial, but also more political. I don't know. I have a very like messed up gauge for political because I'm confrontational. But I think I posted some things that I wouldn't necessarily usually post that I wanted to check in the story and see how everyone felt about them just before we set that precedent, because I can always take them down. But mostly they were kind of informational about let me get it open. Trans Day of Remembrance, and then
the Transgender Awareness Equality Now.
And then additional kinds of resources that are not just art-based.
None
I
of that
don't-
bothered me.
Okay.
So my thought is if we list in the mission statement who our community is, right? And I feel like as long as it is, you can justify that it's serving your community, then I think that is fine. Like,
Yeah.
to me, it gets a little too, when you say political, it's when you're, I guess, like you're advocating for something that maybe is like a specific candidate or a specific policy, but this is just like general awareness information. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
This
that's
is
kind
not
of what I
partisan.
was worried about, especially like I wasn't posting a lot of it when it was coming to the election because I was like, I don't need Dwan getting like opening the inbox and going, whoa, like why is someone super mad at us? But also, again, me personally, I'm a very confrontational person in the most positive way possible. Like I don't mind having that conversation. I don't care if somebody disagrees with me. Like I'm down to have that talk, you know?
Well, and I think that's the conversation too that we should be having within the printmaking community.
Mhm. Yeah, so I just wanted to see like what y'all's feelings were about that.
I think maybe adding to the guidelines that content that supports the interests of the community that, you know, the Radical Intersectional Print Guild, you know, members are comprised of, like, and then that way that language can cover what you just posted, because not like that I think there's anything wrong with what you posted, but I always think that since this is a document meant for like anybody, we should give as much guidance as possible in terms of content.
I would
you
also,
write that here.
I think so.
Okay. What were you going to say, Ruben?
this is maybe a little bit of a personal thing for me, but I feel very passionate about it, and it's something that I want to see more organizations embrace. But and I actually was talking, Ani, with Corinne Teed about this as well. But the idea of mutual aid, having the organization like embrace the idea of mutual aid more, and integrating it actually into the way that they operate, and not being like trying to like create an approach that isn't like fearful of it, because a lot of nonprofits are feedback that I was directly given from another nonprofit person was that mutual aid is unsustainable and therefore not worth it. And when that's like at its core, what mutual aid is supposed to be, it's not supposed to be sustainable. It's supposed to be flexible and changing constantly. And so that's something I would like to see. And to me, like, I feel very directly about that. And willing to get like, I actually am not a very confrontational person, but that is something lately that I've been wanting to be a little bit more confrontational about. And like more, but like in a like, I want to proliferate that discussion way more, and see it like happen. I also don't know like how, but I don't want to dismiss it in a way, you know. And when I was kind of met with automatic dismissal from this nonprofit in town, I was kind of a little inflamed. And so were like members of like my own like community here.
Well, and I can also understand what you're saying, because the reason I chose not to was because it wasn't my decision, you know, like I did it today because I was like, we're literally going to talk in like 4 hours. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
But it's because of the same situation that you're discussing. I've had my own conversations, and friends have also like actively been censored. Like I have a friend right now who currently has a show, got into the show. They won't put her art on the website because it's too controversial. And like her show's not controversial. It's about, I don't know which specific piece it is, but I know she's got some pieces that are about periods, and she's got some pieces that are about, you know, underwear, and there might be blood in them. And it's like,
I'm sorry, we still can't talk about periods.
Right. And what it tends to be is it's directly, and this isn't the first time this specific friend has been censored. And the last time it happened, we both went to the graduate school head because we were like, it was in grad school and they didn't want her to use a certain image from her show for her posters. And they kept giving us like wiggly, weird answers. And finally we were like, well, let's just go straight to the top and see what they say. And they said, what? What are they doing? Why are they doing that? And what it is we had a conservative donor in that environment. This is what I suspect. And they were concerned that that conservative donor would want to back out.
Yep.
And that's not what I want this to be. But I also didn't want to make that like executive decision and put myself in that position to be like, we're just going to do it, you know? Because again, I don't know if you guys have seen that TikTok where it's like the speech from The Princess and the Frog, where it's like, won't you take my hand? Like, I don't want to do that to you guys without consent, you know? And I don't want to do that to the organization without, you know, some explicit conversations about it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I just think like not setting like kind of a precedent to not be afraid to talk about these topics is something that like, because a lot of that fear is really ingrained. And so like when topics like that do come up, like people are used to like it being approached from like a really fearful place. And so they automatically want to jump to that emotion.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the safe space language, like inclusivity language that we want to embrace, that I think could be really important. But
I'm going to add serve, include, or benefit. So while we were talking, I made this statement. Also, I wanted to acknowledge Christina's statement as well, because I don't think I explicitly did so out loud. But I think you're right, Christina. It's exactly true that like we are supposed to make people feel included and as like part of our community. And if we were like trans people, you know, like that wouldn't sit well with me. And it's especially because, you know, this week is an important week, you know. It's also important that people know that like trans people are still being killed, non-binary people are still being killed and assaulted and harassed, and that's not gone away and it needs to go away. And if you don't talk about it, it's just going to fester. And I'm going to stop talking about it because I'm getting mad. So we're going to move on from that. Does anybody have anything to contribute to this statement or any like way that I could rephrase it to be a little bit more clear?
If you wanted to take screenshots of the content that you've posted and you can put them, because it says like examples of appropriate content, like you could put an image there, you know?
Oh, good point. Yeah.
And I think that might be nice. But that's pretty much it. Just kind of like thinking of this as a document that can be as clear as possible. And two, I think that looks good.
Okay. Cool. Oh, sorry, I unhighlighted. Any other feedback?
Are we still able to go in and make changes to this document?
Yes, you should be able to. If you can just log in and do whatever you want to, Kay.
Yeah, I remember there was a yeah.
Yeah.
I remember there was a deadline, and I had like, you know, put all my feedback there, but like as we're talking about this, I've sort of had some ideas, and I just was wondering if it would be all right if I went in and just like added a couple more things. And
that's actually a really good point that you bring up, because the deadline was mostly so that like it could be reformatted as one like big document. And so that's what I did here was I reformatted it as like a big, this is everybody's statements. Or actually, hold on, I might have opened the wrong one. Yep, I did. Let me copy this. And let's look at this. So it's essentially the same. I tried to like combine, there were two different types of formatting happening there. Well, there was one that was like example formatting, and then there was actual like fleshed out information, and they were all existing in different places. So I tried to put it all together. Feel free to, like, all the things in purple are things I filled in. because they were not quite explicitly said. So those are all things like feel free to pick into those. I think we also said reposting members' posts in the story or otherwise to promote their artwork or accomplishments. This is kind of on hold right now because we can't accept membership, but I also probably should ask you all, would you like to start doing this with volunteer posts? Or will that start feeling kind of exclusionary because we're only doing volunteers?
I don't think I want to yet, because it does feel a little exclusive.
Especially since we're already doing meet our members for mostly just volunteers. It is a trial run, to be fair, but
I think maybe seeing once you turn it into a business account and seeing what type of posts, because I see where it could feel like, you know, exclusive, but at the same time, like if people are responding more to that type of content, I would think it would be great to increase traffic that, I mean, use it as a vehicle to increase traffic potentially, but I mean, that's just what I was thinking on the
yeah.
flip side.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe what we'll do is we'll have like a period of collecting data, and then at our next board meeting, essentially is what they're going to start being. We'll still have, by the way, like regular volunteer meetings because like we need to be coordinated, but board meetings will happen more often.
Will
the next board meeting we'll kind of review those and see what to do from there. And then again at the next, because we only do volunteer meetings once a month, maybe at the December volunteer meeting, we'll review them again, something like that. Does that sound good? Groovy.
I was gonna say, make the Instagram a business page sooner rather than later, because the sooner you do it, the sooner you can start looking at your insights, because it won't show you the insights for anything before.
Okay, I might actually just go ahead and do that right now.
Yeah, it will want you to make a Facebook page as well for it. So if that's something, I mean, you can also just like not do anything with it. There's tons of people who just have like blank Facebook pages because they don't use it.
Oh, okay.
But
okay,
FYI.
That'll take me a little longer than the 3 seconds that we have right now. So we are kind of getting close to the end. So as far as ideas go, I was actually going to ask for ideas, but what Kay suggested earlier, what they said about going back into this document and looking through it and making more suggestions, I think that's a really good idea, because I would like personally to have more feedback on like ways we could be changing this. So feel free to do that. I think I am going to set like a deadline on it, just because that kind of helps with the revision process. But keep in mind, this is going to keep getting revised until it's in the bylaws, because it is going in the bylaws eventually. So feel free to, you know, elaborate on things as much as you need to. I'm trying to remember if I had any issues with comments before, but I don't think I did. I think it was pretty easy to read. So yeah, just feel free to pop into there. Make sure you're opening the right one, unlike me, the final draft. So, and that's inside of the Instagram folder in our drive. So cool. So that's all for Instagram. I have more help from Kay and Stephanie. We talked about ideas because Kay is psychic. And then the next group that we are going to talk about is the mailing list. I know we have 2 templates right now. I need to stitch them together still. I've got ahead on my grading and behind on that. So I'm probably going to do that this weekend. But what we are going to do with those templates, I was thinking, has there been anything else that either Ruben or Kay, have you guys noticed? Have you all noticed? any need for like any additional templates other than just the initial responding one?
I don't think so. When I was, when I was going through and like making the templates, which were 100% based on the responses that Becky, you had written, so thank you for that. I was sort of noticing that most of it was just like email updates, or someone wanted to be added to the email list. And there was a few sort of like odd and like inquiries that came in that you had to, answer in an individualized way. But yeah, so I felt like there wasn't really anything else that I could do. What about you, Ruben? Did you see anything?
No, I mean, and I have to admit too, like I haven't done probably as much in my mailing duties as possible, but one of the things that I was kind of like thinking about was in this template, because because yeah, Kate, you're totally right. There are some things that have to be kind of more personalized. So integrating, like just having a little section where it can be like more personalized in a couple sentences, and then having like maybe like a more standardized automated response. But I'm also thinking too about like a information package that we could provide. Things like like here's a link, like here's the link to our Instagram, to our Discord, to like our membership YouTube channel, so that you can like catch up on all the things, because now they'll be like, depending on whenever they join, there's a lot that they'll be like catching up on. So just thinking about what that kind of core package is. And I think that was formed the basis of what my template was. But
Yeah,
that's primarily it.
You both have really well developed ideas, which is part of why I'm like, oh, these are both great. Let me stitch them together.
Yeah, go for it. Do what you need.
So I think,
yes,
as far as that goes, I'm pretty happy with the two of you. And also I think Joey is also on that group. I can't remember if they're on Instagram or email right now, but you have another person that's helping you who's also kind of been, I know, checking the emails, keeping up with the Discord and things like that. One template that I might actually request from both of you, either of you, whoever's week it is, whatever, is just a general kind of formatting for like announcements to be sent out, just so that I'm staying consistent whenever I'm typing those up. I also, because the two of you are potentially interested in becoming board members, may delegate that task entirely to either of you or both of you, because I think always getting messages from me can maybe get a little bit boring, just like when meetings are just me going, this is what we've done, blah, blah. But that also might just be my own like resentment of my voice. Doubled in strength since Zoom classes have started. But if you could possibly, I've sent out a few, but it would be, and if this is too quick of a turnaround, please tell me. I'm not going to be like, how dare. But if you could possibly do one so that I can try plugging stuff in from this meeting, that would be awesome. Just because in general, I want people to know the kinds of announcements we have. I guess this will probably help more than me just giving you specific information. But the kinds of information that I tend to announce are YouTube videos, votes, and I'm trying to think if there's something else. Meetings, but as of right now, meetings are not like closed, but it's mostly just volunteers involved until after the fact.
we could make a template for this is like super small, but make a template for asking volunteers and members to submit their artwork and like oh my gosh, what's it called, headshot. That's something, it's real tiny, but a template could be helpful.
That would definitely be helpful, Kay, because there's a lot of like little emails that I end up, because they're little, they build up. We all know emails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the frequency again of emails that we want to be like sending out announcement wise?
So right now it's kind of sparse,
Right.
but that's mostly because all of the, I hesitate to even call them board meetings, but all of the in-between meetings with me and Olivia were mostly just like, okay, like now what? But I think once we have like a more official interim board, there will be kind of interim board announcements. There will be volunteer team announcements that are all of us as a group. And then of course, votes will always, I'm hoping that we'll be at a point where we can pretty much, I don't know how exhausting this will be for our membership, but I'm hoping that we'll get to a point where like every 3 weeks, there's a new vote. It's up for a week. They get like a week of resting period. And then I'd like to really crank it out like clockwork, but I also know that might not work with everyone's schedule. So yeah.
So to then recap, like so we'd like to do like a general like announcements email template, one that includes like the YouTube video, any information about votes, and then like meeting, basically like the meeting minutes, like a summary of the meeting, or
Yes.
okay.
That would be very nice because, and you don't necessarily have to write those out each time. Like I can also write those out. We're also here.
Yeah.
And sometimes we might not all be here. So it could be like, I'm not here, but Olivia is, but Ruben is also here. So then Ruben, you might write up that summary, or maybe Kay is here and neither of us are here. Then it would be Kay's job to write that summary, that kind of thing. That way it's easy because we're like, okay, right, this is the information to plug in. And then
one thing it might help me.
Oh,
sorry, you go. Actually, you finish.
Okay. So something you said actually kind of pinged in my brain. I don't know if we should do a general announcement email template or if we should do email templates for each. You know what I mean? So maybe an email template for YouTube videos.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Votes.
I see what you're saying. That was my misunderstanding.
Not necessarily. I probably wasn't being clear. I'm sometimes kind of opaque in the way that I talk. So circuitous, that's the word.
Yeah, but that makes complete sense. And we can use like some of the communication that's already existing now.
Yes, feel free. Any email that I've sent. I don't think I've sent any where I've sworn, probably. So.
If you have, I'll censor you.
Oh, okay.
In a tasteful way.
Like it with fudge, like they used to do on made-for-TV movies.
Yeah. But also one thing to, if there's like a meeting agenda.
Yes.
That's something that, and this is just like I'm learning in my own experience at the community college I teach at, but when we have our department meetings, the things that like help me, like because I can't always attend them because they're on like a day that I teach. And, but like when I get like the recaps from just the agenda, that really like helps me recall that. So if you have an agenda that for this particular meeting that like you could email to me like afterwards.
I do. So I've said before I have ADHD, so like I have to have agendas or else I will start talking about dogs and not stop. So I have one that's handwritten. It's also how I remember what I'm doing. I'm very kinetic, so I have to write things. But I can type this up and send it to you as well. It's mostly just going to be like bracket points, but I'll also kind of fill in what we talked about because I also do that after the meetings to make sure I remember everything.
How legible is your handwriting?
It's pretty legible, I think. Oh, you can't see anything. Nope, nothing. Illegible in every possible way.
I was gonna say if it's easier, maybe this time try it, but like you try like both ways with like typed out, but then also if it's easier, you can just take a photograph of it. And if I can read it, then that's fine.
That would be so dope.
Yeah, because I want to save time from you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Because again, I'm understanding that you and Olivia are doing a lot and anything that we can do to save time.
Yeah, well, and it's also nice because it's not, all just me going, okay, this is how this email is going to sound, because I have a very specific writing voice.
Yeah.
And you can tell that it's an email from me, and I know that. But I'd like to have like more, you know, voices involved. I don't necessarily want us to start defaulting to the like institutional voice. I think it's good to keep having that personality to each email, as long as we're not like, I don't know, calling people out or maybe swearing, I guess. I have mixed feelings about that because like I can swear all the time. Except when I teach. It's like a skill that I've developed from being around children that I just like. But yeah, that would be really cool. And then one other thing is I would really like us to have for the mailing list like an official header and footer with like contact us links, things like that. That might be something, if we have more templates, it might be something that I can actually work with Tuan over, because she's been helping so much with all the other interfaces. She's already got a bunch of the files. But I'm also wondering, because the two of you are here, and you don't have to answer me right now, you can think on it a little bit, maybe send me an email or a message on Discord, but what kind of information would you want to have in the header and footer? You know, like we kind of have a logo. I'm not married to that logo, but we would also kind of want to start thinking about like, okay, what kind of colors are we going to go for emails that are official from us? Are we going to stay with that mint green that we've been working with for this whole time? Or will the logo be mint green, the rest of the header a different color? That kind of information.
Yeah.
And also like maybe an official signature would be good too. So if you guys could kick those ideas, or if you both could kick those ideas around in the back of your head, that would be wonderful as well.
That's actually primarily why on the Discord a couple weeks back I had asked for like a some kind of like little miniature design that could be like smaller that we could then insert into the signature, so that it could become like a more like I could start thinking about like a solidified graphic that we utilize. And then for header, I mean, right off the bat, I'm already kind of thinking about like stylistic consistency with like the green banner. If there's a way to kind of, I don't know how to make pretty emails like that.
So I actually had
pretty in my emails on my
last
signature
semester. So I might actually take some of my students, because I'm lazy, and I might take a couple of my students, like the ones who got good grades, their formatting, and kind of chop it up into something a little bit more amenable, because you know they're still students. But I might send a few of those to the both of you if that sounds good. Just great. So we can get kind of eyes on like a visual that we're all kind of comprehending at the same time, because I can say header footer, but that can mean like 85 different things technically. So I think I'll make a note of that for myself as well.
And I'm somebody who is, I love standards. Like I love having branding stuff. Like when KCAI rolled out like a whole new branding guideline thing that was like 60 pages long, I ate that whole thing up. But I think it's also like really helpful to then, because my students were even communicating to me that like they did actually find that like the information I was sending out, because it was branded and like conforming to like brand guidelines.
And it's easier to navigate. That's part of why I wanted that structuring for the YouTube emails, etc., because it's much easier for people to see it and go, oh, it's a YouTube video. I don't have 2 hours this week, you know, or it's a YouTube video that's important. I should look at that, or whatever reaction they're going to have. They immediately know this is what this is, instead of just, you know, my inconsistencies showing through and then going, wait.
One thing that you know, I may want to propose is like looking at a volunteer who specifically is like a designer. Thinking, you know, if there's somebody within the volunteer group that would like to step up and take on the role of designing. I
actually have thought about asking Tuan if she would be comfortable with that. But I think maybe I'll send her a message and check in with her Is everybody else on board with that idea as well? Yeah, I also agree. It's the majority of what Tuan has been helping me with is that kind of formatting, that designing, that consistency. That really is important, especially for like a little baby business like us. So, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And
somebody, I mean,
Mhm.
because Brett Liснey was really kind of quick
Oh, yeah.
to provide some stuff. Like I know he's not on, like he's not in here right now, and but
Mhm.
he might be somebody as well.
And it could also be that because in my mind, you all have the authority to ask the membership for help at any point. That's how I've always kind of seen it. I don't know if I've ever explicitly said that.
No, but that helps to know.
Yeah, I think as long as it's pertaining to what we're doing, you know, if you're like, okay, I mean, obviously ask fellow volunteers first, because we're the ones who've already said, yes, we can do this. But you can also kind of send a message out into the general Discord. Like, I don't know if it was me or if it was you, Ruben, but sending it out into that generalized Discord, you might get a response back from somebody who's like, oh, I have time this week. You know, I just don't want to make it so that we're expectant of the general membership when they haven't, you know, explicitly signed up to dedicate time to this.
That's good for me to know, because I don't think I kind of was like super aware of that. I was just like, hey, I also have like no problem asking for help on stuff, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah, and depending on which group it is, like for email, talk to email first.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe ask me as well. And also we're going to be restructuring because of the board anyway.
Yeah.
But like, you know, contact the people within that group first, then go a little bit bigger, then go to the full membership, you know. I don't think going to the full membership is like the first step, but I do think it is a step in that process, you know.
Okay.
Especially because we have very specific random needs that pop up like willy-nilly. And you never know whose parent is an accountant like Annie's or a lawyer like Olivia's, you know. They might be able to help. So, okay, so we're approaching the end, so I'm going to start trying to blow through these a little bit more.
Okay.
The last two sections are a little bit smaller. So for bylaws, I already kind of mentioned, I do think we might actually combine them with the legal team. And I just wanted to see if there's any resistance to the idea. I know we don't have anybody from bylaws here, but we only have 2 people on the bylaws team, which the more, like the closer we get to bylaws, the more I'm like, that's not enough people to do the editing. So what do you all think?
I'm fine, because in my mind they go together, because when I hear you say them separate, I'm like, but they really are all under this umbrella called Incorporation. Because like, I think initially you were thinking that legal could just be the incorporating steps, but essentially bylaws are a big part of that too. So it's like, it has to like, I feel like, because if I'm doing all this research with, you know, the nonprofit legal stuff that lists how to write bylaws, like I feel like then the bylaw team should be involved with that too, because it is going to help them write it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that'll also cut down on the stress of like having meetings where only the legal team shows up. Because again, like we're all in different time zones with different requirements for our lives right now. And I think in a lot of ways that might be better. I don't think we're going to have like an official vote on this, but I just wanted to kind of breach the idea. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to send out an email to both the legal and bylaw team, since Chelsea's not here, Juana's not here, and neither is Eliana. So I'd like to see what their responses to that are and kind of explain the logic behind it as well. But from anybody outside of those 2 groups, is there any like weird feeling of like, oh no?
No, I think it makes sense, like what Annie was saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Also agree with Ani. Efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Which is the name of the game right now. Oh my gosh. Cool. And I see Steph's thumb up. And Okay. So I just wanted everybody to just kind of remind everyone that the next big thing for our incorporation team is drafting and sectioning. So that's going to be like gigantic. And I just wanted to let everybody know that those two, well, that one group is going to be very, very busy in the upcoming weeks. And like I said before, I'm hoping to have kind of a turnaround of maybe once a month we vote on a new section and kind of try and keep it really consistent like that so that we have time for people to get their votes in, which I think is really important. But also so that we have that kind of immediacy of turnaround and moving on and stuff like that. I also think we had an important conversation earlier about the mission statement and what to do now that we have the feedback. And we'll meet again to talk a little bit more about this, but I'm for now going to just like presume that that will be the pattern that we follow, where we essentially put out a vote and then we put out a ratification if we get a majority of votes that say, yes, this does suit me or does serve me, right? We might start changing our minds as we go along. But I think for now, that's just going to be the presumption. Okay. The precedent, I guess, is a better word for it. Okay, cool. So that's it for bylaws. Next is YouTube. So we don't have, do we have anybody from the YouTube team? No, okay. So for them, one big thing that's changed is I've started recording to the cloud, which creates transcripts automatically in Zoom.
Yes, it does.
Yes, which is a wonderful thing to know because I can plug that transcript into the YouTube videos. And so essentially their job has shifted from being about fully typing out everything that I ever say to instead editing what the program is perceiving. So that's a little bit easier. And it also means we immediately have available CCs. The closed captions aren't great. They're not like perfect every single time, but I've sat through about an hour of them before, and more or less I can infer what's being said when the thing is on mute. I still think it's really important for them to go back through and revise it so that it does read correctly, but it's a little bit less pressure put directly on them. One issue with that is I am not getting renewed for either of my adjunct contracts next semester because the UNC system has asked everybody to cut their budgets and adjuncts are disposables. So the reason that matters right now is I might not have access to a paid subscription for Zoom, which means I probably won't be able to save to the cloud anymore. So we may have to have somebody else hosting the meetings. So you don't have to stay the host the whole time. You can transfer hosting to me. But I just wanted everybody to know that. Okay.
I'm fine helping you out if you ever need it because I have a pro account.
Same.
Yeah.
And yeah, my like so far, I mean, with the community college that I'm at, that provides Zoom. I'm not at any risk.
Okay.
So
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, so we will keep going with that. I'm not sure if either of them need help. I know Luca at one point was saying that they were a little bit overwhelmed, and then Haley at one point got sick, but I think it's feeling better. So I should check back in with the two of them more directly as well. If they do need help, I might assign someone in general. Stephanie, I know you're not with Barbara right now, but I don't have their phone number.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if you might ask, what are Barbara's pronouns?
She and they.
Okay, so I might just, if you don't mind, asking them if they would like to maybe do YouTube, or I think the other group that might need help is Instagram.
She can also help with like drawing anything we might need, or infographics or anything like that too. I don't know if that's something, but I can also forward you her phone number so that you
That would be perfect. That would be very, very helpful. Because like periodically I'll be like, what if Barbara? The end. That's the end of my question. What if?
Barbara would really love to help, so I think that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, that was a conversation Olivia and I had as well, where we have a lot of general volunteers. And for a while I was like, well, they'll sort themselves. But they had, like, Olivia made the point to me that they're probably asking for me to do it for them, where they're like, literally anything. I'm not going to do that with the present.
Like what needs to be assigned. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. So instead, I will try to be the sorting hat for everyone. I don't know how happy I am with that analogy right now, but
I'm just loving you made a Harry Potter analogy.
yeah, it's, I mean, that's a whole other conversation on whether or not you can separate the, you know, artist or author from their work, which I think about constantly. But so I think, you know, whenever I do encounter people throughout these messages, it's a good idea for us to be like, hey, do you want to do this or this? You know, give them more limited options. Because I think it would be helpful for us to have more people actively engaged in specific areas. Because I'm realizing right now we don't have a lot of general stuff to do. There's not a lot of running going on. So I might just kind of say, for now, could you blah, blah, blah. So that's the last thing I wanted to talk about before we return to the Juried exhibition for West Virginia University from Joe Lupo. Before we get really into the details on that, does anybody have anything else they'd like to talk about as far as the group or anything like that? Okay, cool. And of course, we all have, I hope we all have Discord. Stephanie, do you and Barbara have the Discord?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna text that to you as well. I'll text it to the both of you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, now that I have their number. Okay, written down. It will happen now. So the details that we've gotten from Joe are essentially it's going to be a juried exhibition. Joe has asked Olivia and I to be the jurors. And then, oh, that's the wrong email from Joe. My bad. Okay. Oh, let me share my screen. This is going to be so much easier than me just reading it to you. I have one of those brains where, like, if you read to me, I'm like, I don't know what you're saying to me. So Joe sent this email to Olivia. We were talking about more of like the space, the general expectations. And while we're looking at this, my general question for you all is, do you think this is something that would be of service to our members? This would be in the spring semester. I can't remember if it would be in January or February or a little bit later, but I know for sure it's in the spring semester. So we would essentially have a small exhibit in the glass cases that they have in the somewhere. I'm not sure where. Stephanie would know. They have 4 glass cases that lock, 2 glass cases that are 81 by 36, and 2 that are 58 by 45. So the work can be whatever size, and we could send as much, or we could say like we have a size requirement. Those are all things that would have to kind of get ironed out. We would show the unframed work on paper. It doesn't all have to be prints, but it is a printmaking program. And then, of course, the bulldog clips with a little square of paper to protect. I'm sure everybody's, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's essentially binder clips. It might make a little crease on the top of the paper, but essentially what Joe would need is the prints info, bio, and an artist statement digitally emailed to him. So that's the information we have now from Joe. Is there anything else that you guys would want? Well, let me start at the beginning. Do you want to do it?
Yes.
I think it sounds like a super cool opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this open to the volunteers, all the volunteers, or any of the volunteers? Like,
So I think what Joe intended for it to be was for it to be open to the membership.
okay,
Kind of also what I want to do. I shouldn't put words in his mouth because I don't know for sure. I'm not the one having those direct conversations. Olivia is, but she wanted me to bring this up sooner rather than later. My personal preference is for it to be open to all members, because I think just like what Ruben has said and what, you know, we've been reiterating the whole way through, we haven't done anything in like a demonstrable way that engages in the art community. We've done a bunch of the like art administrative tasks, which are really great if you're into art administration, you know. So I do think this would be a really good way to essentially give that permanency and reality to our group, if that makes sense. This might not be the right words, but.
no, yeah. I mean, the reason I asked is because I was like, well, I would feel uncomfortable if it was just open to us, and I wanted to that's why I wanted to clarify, because I feel like that makes more sense for it to be open to the membership.
Yeah. And I think like thinking of, oh, sorry, Kay, were you going to say something?
Nope, go for it. I was just agreeing.
Oh, yeah. And maybe I'm just like envisioning too, like this as an extension of like mutual aid, but like what the organization does to like, you know, uplift its like membership and whatnot, you know, or like something that we like envision as like doing to like help. But yeah, like I completely agree with it and think we should do it.
Cool.
And also, when does this time with like, do you know when the Pine Copper Lime podcast episode comes out?
Not yet. So Olivia told me that Stephanie told her, which Stephanie's right here, so they might as well just say it. But Stephanie, how long did it take for your show to go up? It was like a couple of months, right?
Are you talking about my show in grad school?
No, I'm sorry. I should be more specific. Your Pine Copper Lime interview.
Oh, it took months. Because we did it in 2019. Oh man, I could actually pull up the email and tell you.
Okay.
Because I can't remember when we recorded, but it was the first one of 2020. So let me look it up.
And we are planning on it, you know, checking in with Miranda a little bit closer to like the general time, but it felt weird to be like, this happened 2 weeks ago. When is it going up? You know?
Right. Well, and I only say that because I want to be like strategic about stuff and thinking too about like that visibility. And it's like, okay, if this big podcast comes out and then like there's also like a show, or if there's something that we can kind of like plan around it. Cause I know like Miranda does like at the beginning, like she'll do like a little introduction and then she says like, if something's like going up, so maybe she could like plug it or something.
Yeah. Yeah, she did ask if we had anything, if anything came up that was going to be something to promote. And we were like, well, right now, you know, probably by the time you're recording, it'll be very different, or by the time you're posting it, it'll be different than it is right now. And so I think that's part of why we kind of want to talk to her soon, but I think we're probably going to wait until like at least next month to check in on that. But I agree that we should be strategic about that. One other thing that we should think about with that Pine Copper Lime interview is the likelihood of an influx of members. It might not happen. We might get 5 people, who knows? But just being emotionally prepared for that to happen so that we're not, you know, dropping the ball around the time when it comes out. So when we find out.
Oh, I was just going to ask Stephanie if you saw that.
If I saw what?
like an influx in like followers on Instagram?
Oh
Like, did
yeah, for sure. And it was kind of, it feels kind of random too, because not everyone's listening to it the first day it comes out. So it kind of happened like over time when it first came out. And then I think there are still some, because sometimes I still get messages telling me how much they appreciated the episode. So I think it's really great because you'll definitely get more followers and you'll definitely get more knowledge. So, or not knowledge, acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, even if it's not the show with Joe Lupo at Western Virginia, what if it's like another one that we have like planned?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, I know this is gonna sound really weird, so I'm trying to figure out like how to phrase it so that I don't sound like a lizard person, but because my immediate thought is to use like the word baguettes, and that's like not how people talk. So I think what happens is things continue to snowball. There's a term that people actually use. They tend to accumulate on top of each other. And so I'm hopeful that as we become more legitimate, as we become more, coordinated, we will have more of a sense of opportunity happening. And I also kind of want to talk about, and I haven't talked to Olivia about this at all either, but if you know someone who has like the ability to offer us an opportunity, ask, like we're not, I mean, you can also be like, hey, I know of this thing, board or all volunteers, which really I'd rather it be all volunteers for now. What do you all think about this? You could just shoot out a quick email from the RI Print Guild email or from your personal email. Either way is fine. Just make sure you BCC and just say, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Do you guys want to talk about this at the next meeting? Because those kinds of things are really integral to us kind of building that following, but also to visibility, which is, I think, the most important thing for us right now, especially because we said we were going to start getting to work in July, and then we just we didn't really do this. We were more like, because the semester started, COVID-19 was wild. I had to rewrite 17 syllabi. It just, and I know that couldn't have just been my experience. We all had a lot of wild things happening this semester that we couldn't have anticipated. And then Stephanie, so one thing I said to Stephanie, because they asked what time on Thursdays we would usually have like Olivia and me meetings, Olivia and I to meet. None of that's the right syntax, whatever. We usually do that like in the early afternoon EST. So like for me, it's usually like 1, but for her, she's an MST, which is weird because sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 3 hours of a difference. It's wild. I told you it was an experience to try and plan this meeting.
They don't have time, like the time doesn't change.
Yes, it's just
our time does change.
You're like, no, it's just this. So it's usually around like 11-ish for her, and she tends to have to go after like 3-4 hours, so which we do sometimes talk for that whole time. So we probably won't as a formal meeting, because what happens is we start like kikiing really hard, and then and then we're like, wait, we're here for like a reason. But that's generally the time. I also know a lot of y'all teach, so next semester, or you're in school, so next semester everything might change anyway. So I'm open to like reassessing that. And then Stephanie said, okay, so about a month. Yeah, so maybe next week I will contact Miranda and ask, because I do believe this is going to be coming out sometime next year. I don't think it's going to be coming out in December, but I will check with her.
Becky, would it be helpful for the exhibition that Joe Lupo is like generously offering? Would it be helpful to make like a sort of I don't know if like prospectus is the right word, but just if we're going to get the word out to the members and volunteers, then maybe we could have like a graphic with like information that they can submit, and you know, just to let them know that it's like juried and what the specifications are and things like that.
Yes, I do think it's really important for us to have a call. I also think it's important for us to communicate like a limit on the number of prints that will be in the show, so that they know ahead of time, like it is juried. And we might get, you know, we might have 22 people submit when we have a limit of 25. And in that case, you know, it's fine. Like we have enough people that we could be like, okay, you put in 2 more or put in something bigger, you know, to take up that space. Whereas what I'm worried about is we'll have like 100 members submit and they'll all be like, and I'm going to be in this show because I am a member. And I want to be very clear, like that's not what this show necessarily is going to be. Some shows in the future may be that way, but this one is juried. And, you know, most people, I'm not going to say most people because you never know what other people know. That is the convention, to just say juried and then expect people to kind of know what that means.
Yeah.
But we also are open to anybody involved in print in any capacity. So we need to be sure that we're communicating effectively, because this could be somebody's first show. So.
Yeah, that's true. I can start working on that in using the Ripg account, and I'll just like make a doc and we can just start adding to it. Yeah.
I think that's great. As far as formatting for it, my suggestion, and this sort of depends on a couple of things. It depends on like the length of that kind of call, prospectus, whatever we want to call it. But there's a part of me that kind of wonders if we just do like a border around it that's a certain color. We haven't done purple yet for anything, and I really like purple.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do like a purple one and, you know, repeatedly post that, not only on the story, but also on the our actual feed, so that people get reminders, but they also are aware that it exists, and maybe it'll get more attention. It'll get shared maybe a little bit more.
Is the show in February, you said?
I need to check again with, I think I'm just going to check directly with Joe. Well, I'll ask Olivia, because that's delegating tasks is important. So
Yes, it is.
so I will ask Olivia.
Yeah, I'm thinking if, you know, if it's in February, we're already almost in December. And just to make sure that we give people enough time to like submit, and then give you guys enough time to jury and then like ship the work, you know. So I feel like it's going to come really fast, you know.
Yes. Yeah, you're very right about that. I mean, you're right.
I have a question. Who's going to jury?
So Joe has asked me and Olivia to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, you probably already said that.
I might not have. I don't remember. So I know it'll be the 2 of us. And that's also something we should communicate clearly, is like, it's going to be curated by the, we've been referring to ourselves as founding members, because we want to make it clear we're also just members, you know, so it'll be juried by the founding members. And I think I'll start like collecting information about that from Olivia, or actually, Kay, what it might be better for the 2 of you to just communicate directly with one another. So I think what I'll do is right now I'm going to text Olivia and tell her that you will be working on that. Are you going to be working on that on your own, or did you want any kind of assistance?
I think I can handle it, but at some point I would love like a second pair of eyes on it.
Yes, feel free to do, you could literally text it to me or Instagram it to me or email it to me or whatever.
Okay.
You don't have to send it directly to me. That's just kind of been the default because I put the actual things together. Let me check real quick and see if the original logo and the original kind of background are still on the Google Drive, because I believe they are. Yes, so they are all in, and you don't need to use these exactly, but they might be a good way to just like place a whatchamacallit, a white box on top of in order to put text into. But there are all of these. I forgot that the interest meeting was purple, but we won't be having more interest. Well, we might have more interest meetings, but we can go with like a more plum maybe for the border. But
Okay.
also creative liberty, follow your heart. I'm sure whatever you come up with is also going to be like slamming. So, but this is where it is. These are all in social media images on the drive. So,
Okay.
yeah, feel free to take them, chop them up, do whatever you need to do with them. I have duplicates on my own thing as well. So
Perfect.
worried. Okay. Cool. Yay, so much is getting done. I'm so happy. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to give Olivia a heads up that you will be talking to her, Kay, and then she'll be, she won't be like, what? Which sometimes happens to both of us because we're like too many different thoughts in our head. So that is all of the information that I have to like present to you all. I think what I like to do at the board at the meetings with Olivia and I, and at the end of most meetings, is just kind of talk about like where we're going to go from here. We're a little bit over the end of the meeting, so I'm going to just kind of run through this really fast. So we're going to be continuing the Meet Our Members. If you haven't uploaded any files to that, please do so. We're hoping to get enough files that we can last until like April, when we hopefully have like all official everything and we can start actually accepting membership dues or fees or prints. And then also the Instagram story, which we just talked about. I think, again, I don't remember who said it. I think it might have been Ruben, but the idea of just providing information and coming at it from that perspective, I think is going to be really important. Just saying, hey, let's say like with the voting, here's a vote 411 in case you wanted to know where to vote in your state. That's good. Saying vote for Trump or we'll kick you out. Don't do that. Okay. I also think it's one thing that I was thinking about earlier this week was like, we've talked about celebrating holidays, but I actually thought about it last month too. For, was it last month? It was a while ago, Indigenous Peoples Day. I wanted to do something for it, but I was like, do I do a graphic? Do I find like what is the right, most ethical way to celebrate this and bring it to people's attention? So I think we can try a lot of different things. Like I made a fun little Halloween graphic because Halloween is Halloween. I wasn't talking about the holiday, the Wiccan holiday. I was talking about Halloween, and the words are different. So I don't feel as uncomfortable with that distinction. But it's when it's like, this week was, there's a better phrase for it, and I've forgotten the actual like name of it, but Trans Awareness Week. And I thought like, well, do I do like a colored banner? Where do I go? And then Christina had, oh yeah, that's a very good idea, Christina. Yay, I like that idea a lot. So Christina suggested that we have an Instagram takeover. And I think that would be really, really cool, especially like if we think about, yes, you did, Ruben. We all wanted to be all caps. Or wait, no, I'm sorry. The kids today say no cap. So I'm dating myself. But I think that's a really good idea, is like reaching out to our membership and saying, again, that's something that like anybody on the Instagram team could do. Any of the, future interim board members could do, is just say, hey, do we have anybody in our membership who, identifies this way that would like to do an Instagram takeover? I completely forgot those existed. So I'm really glad you said something. I'm gonna write it down. Okay. Problem solved. So I think that would be really great. And then we could also do something along the lines of like one Monday every week in, let's say, Black History Month, right? We have a Black printmaker takeover, post, a couple of things throughout the day. I think that would also be a great way to diversify our feed, which I do think we've had some issues with the feed diversity, and that's messing with the algorithm too. Stephanie said, if no one volunteers, we can also make an infographic. That's true, we could. An infographic is a good idea. It's a very good idea. It's a good idea also to have a backup because it may be, we haven't reached that demographic yet. Or there might be people in that community that don't feel safe, and we should respect that. Ooh. Okay, so I'm hearing Barbara. You know what I might do is, I almost said something, but then I disagreed with it internally. What we might do is have, instead of we'll still have the Instagram team, but I think what I might ask Tuan to do is separate off with Barbara into a separate team that is design. Does that sound like a good idea? And like different people can pop into it. Like I know Kay will be doing the prospectus type thingamabobber, and they could pop into the group, kind of pug around, do a couple of things, and then they could pop back out into mailing list and Instagram. And same with Stephanie, they could pop in and then pop out. Same with me, although I'm very meddling and I'll just pop in all the time because I'm like that. I watch too much Scooby-Doo. So we're going to continue to meet our members. We talked about the Instagram story. I'm really glad we had that conversation. I agree, Ruben. It's a really good idea to have those roles flexible. That's part of the impetus for the Discord, is to have those hey, this week I'm really freaking slammed. Can somebody pick up the mailing list? Here's where to find all this stuff, And then it could also be hey, I want to do this thing, but I don't have the knowledge to do it. How? Because there's going to be somebody who's oh, I can help with that,
Becky, if you ever need anybody to be a second pair of eyes to edit anything, just let me know, okay?
That would be fantastic, because I've had Kay edit a few things for me. Yes, exactly, Kay, how do? And part of that is so Kay and I went to the same undergrad, and so they know how I write and they know how I talk and they know how to be but also I feel that you would also be very capable of doing that, Ruben, because you've gotten to know me, and I'm this. And it is good for me to have that second pair of eyes to make sure I didn't lose anything. Thank you, Stephanie. I also appreciate that. Okay, so then the mission statement revision is the next thing that we're going to do. And does anybody want to hop onto that task?
As far as doing the edits to it, I'd be happy to.
Okay, so I'm going to put Ruben here.
I'm glad you jumped in on that, because I was gonna say I don't know if I would be the best, since I like I was talking about I kind of wrote it, so I didn't necessarily see the issues with it. So
Yes. Yeah. And the other thing, Ruben, is literally the reverse of what you just said. When you revise it, if you want to like send it out, I can also be that second pair of eyes on it.
Sounds
Okay.
good. The document you sent me as well, where it like actually kind of breaks down all the things in the mission
Yes.
statement, I'm going to probably refer to that.
Okay, perfect.
When
Yeah.
when do we need that again? Within a week?
I think if you could get it finalized by next Wednesday. Is that too soon?
Like this coming Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do that.
And then that way we could do another week-to-week promotion of the vote. Honestly, I like the week and a half better because it gives me more time to do reminders. And, you know, we're artists. We need reminders.
Yes.
But also like the semester's wild. We need reminders.
So many. Oh my
yes.
God.
And even if it's not a semester, life is wild. So reminders. But it gives a little bit more time for people to see those reminders instead of day of. Like today I wasn't feeling great, so my reminder came out super late. But that's also me that's on me for not asking someone else to send it. So I kind of forgot that I could do that. So then after that, we're going to be sectioning out the bylaws. I do think, based on what we've talked about today, I would like to hear back from people who are interested in being board members before we schedule the next legal meeting, because I think it would be important for as many of the board members as possible to also be at the, almost called it a hearing, at that meeting. Just because it'll be a little bit easier for them to be like, okay, so this is what the board is expected to do. Because the board member section is the next section we're editing. So,
right.
yeah. And I also think the more voices in that conversation, the better a sense of ideas we're going to have with that. Because there's so many different things the board members could be. And there are like a handful of things they have to be. So that will be, for those of you who said that you might want to be a board member, if you could get back to me by, did I say Monday of next week? Okay. And you can just reply directly to the RI Print Guild email.
What do you want us to say?
Do you
In that email?
kind of read through the
Oh, okay. I was just making sure that I didn't miss anything else. Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you're like, I understand the role and I want to do it. You know, because it's easy to say, I want to do it, I want to be involved. And then as you get involved to be like, no. Yeah. And I mean, it happens, you know, and that's also, I think, part of the glory of this being an interim director is we get to work out those kinks in real time. So, not trying to kink shame. I'm sorry for all these jokes, you guys. They're not funny. I do this to my students too, and I always am surprised when they laugh. I'm like, it's not funny. Okay. So then we'll also be posting the meeting and transcript. I'm just gonna email that to the YouTubers, the YouTube team, and then also check in on them at the same time. And then if I hear back from them about them having any kind of difficulty or needing any help, then I'm going to start contacting general volunteers and seeing like, okay, who would be willing to help these two, because it's still a lot of work. And then for mailing list, we'll be making templates and the header and footer, right?
Yes.
And I can help with that header and footer. That's probably what's going to happen, right? Or did I forget someone else being involved in that? I remember now. I'm going to send out the example template.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will just send that out to all volunteers. And then I think other than that, after Wednesday, when Ruben has completed the revisions to the mission statement, probably Thursday or maybe later in the day, Wednesday, depending, I will go ahead and send out that vote. And the other thing that I need to do is make the Instagram a business account. Okay. Other than a couple of small things like texting Stephanie and Barbara the Discord, and talking to the bylaw team about whether or not they're comfortable with being conjoined to legal in a larger incorporation team. I think that's it. Is there anything anybody remembers that I forgot? Okay, word. So I will hold off on sending out the summary and promotion of this until I hear from mailing list Kay and Ruben and one other person that I can't remember the name of because I don't remember where everyone has been sorted. Once I hear back from you all, then I will go ahead and try plugging in to that template for that announcement, for the YouTube announcement, basically. So if that kind of gives you an idea of what to work on first in that group, probably the YouTube announcement. Does that all sound okay? It's not too much for any one person because we can redistribute if we need to.
It may take me personally a little while on the templates because I'm going to prioritize the mission statement and the research on the board member stuff. But those are the two things I'm prioritizing.
Okay. Kay, would you be comfortable prioritizing just like the YouTube template and then the next templates we can kind of return to later?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I can also jump in at any point if there's like an immediate like, hey, can you look at this real quick? And, you know, what do you think? And I'll be more than happy to assist.
Awesome. I would love that. I'll definitely reach out to you on Discord.
Yeah, don't hesitate. Yeah, and I use Discord for my classes, so I have it up all the time.
Perfect.
And then, Kay, I will have Olivia send you the prospectus information specifically about things like date, how we're going to do shipping, which some of that might just be like not an arbitrary decision, but we might just have to decide that on our own. Like you guys are going to have to pay for shipping and return because we have no money.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to have money because we're not real. We're just like kind of real. We just want to be a real boy. Seriously, I'm very sorry for all.
That's great. It's like making my night.
Well,
Thank you.
we don't have an EIN. We don't have the, what is it, EIN number. So we can't even open a bank account. So we're nothing. We're nothing until we get that number.
We're just like not into capitalism. So okay. So I will get you I'll get Olivia to send you that information and then I can fill in any blanks that she may have. And then YouTube template. And yeah. Okay. So does anybody have any like questions or feedback or comments or concerns or hopes or dreams that they want to share? Fun stories. No? Okay. I know we've run past our time by like 30 minutes, but this was super productive and I really appreciate all of you for popping in to help with all of this stuff. hopefully next time, because next meeting it'll be December, so most of us will be a little bit more available. Hopefully that'll be a meeting where we all, or at least 10 of us, can come to. But yeah, I look forward to continuing working with you all. I love
Likewise,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Yes. All right. So Stephanie, I need to remember to send you things. So would you mind staying on the chat so that I don't forget about it as soon as we all hang up?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Becky, I have a quick question I want to ask you as well, post-recording.
Okay.
Okay.
Ooh.
Stephanie, you can be here. I don't care.
Oh, I thought you said my name.
Oh, no, Becky, no.
It was good to see everybody. Good to
Good
hear
to
how
see
you're
you,
doing.
Ani.
Again. I'll
Yeah,
talk to
good to see you.
Bye.
You bring me another glass.